Hello, everyone. Welcome into the video. And today we have a very special guest, Boston Bruins play-by-play announcer for NESN on TV, Judd Sirott. And Judd, thank you so much for joining me here.
Thanks for having me, Sam. What's up?
So the Bruins, after they went out 4-2 against the Buffalo Sabres, they had some late game struggles and struggles in big moments as well. But one thing that really stood out to me was their offense only averaged 2 goals a game in that series, including 3 games where they only scored 1 goal and subsequently lost. What are some things that you think the Bruins could have done differently to win that series?
Well, it's a really good question, Sam. And I think, listen, the Bruins had a fabulous season. I don't think anybody had them for 100 points this year. I think there were a lot of people that didn't even think they were going to make the playoffs this year, and they were able to pull that off. I think what's so bittersweet about the end of the season for the Bruins is that was a winnable series. If you think about game one of that series against the Sabres, the Bruins had a 2-0 lead, could not lock it down in game one. And then in game two, they're able to come up with a victory. Yes, they had to hold on at the end, but that was a 1-1 series heading back to Boston. So this is where Brick and I often talk about small margins can make such a big difference. And you mentioned the Bruins offense. What you want is timely goals in the playoffs. I think offense for most teams is a challenge in the Stanley Cup playoffs because everything is so much tighter and so much more contested. But think about game three. The Bruins had a 1-0 lead. They're in the second period. Victor Arvidsson is awarded a penalty shot. And this was a guy I remember having conversations with Jeremy Swayman. He would frustrate Jeremy Swayman in practice because that was the one guy he couldn't stop. Even Marco Sturm thought to himself, this is a perfect guy to have up in this situation, a veteran guy who's got a couple of moves and one in particular that he's really good at. And for some reason, Arvidsson didn't go to that move in the playoffs in that game three against Alex Lyon. And you could feel the energy leave a little bit of the bench. That's what Marco Sturm had mentioned when he was unable to tally there, because at that point, the Bruins are in front. Now you got Buffalo thinking, we lose game two. Now we're behind 2-0 at that point, or the Bruins have jumped out in front here in the second period, and you would have really upped the level of doubt for the Buffalo Sabres in that series. So a missed opportunity there. And then in game four, I think the Bruins themselves had a hard time explaining the start that they had in that opening 20 minutes. So fine, they're down 3-1. They go back to Buffalo. Everybody in Buffalo is getting ready to move on to the next round. And I think the Bruins surprised them, especially with the lineup that they put on the ice. They had some injuries heading in that forced some changes for Marco Sturm, but they come up with a game 5 win. You're thinking, okay, now you got an opportunity here in game 6. But ultimately, it was the Buffalo Sabres that prevailed. It wasn't just the offense, I think, Sam, that did the Bruins in. I think it was a number of different things. But I think if you're going to use offense during that, the Bruins had a hard time scoring timely goals. The other thing that was such a big part of their success during the regular season was scoring on the power play. They didn't have many chances because Buffalo was so disciplined. And then when you did have chances, you were unable to get the goal at the right time.
One last question. One thing I noticed last year, David Pastrnak really had a different role on the team. Only 29 goals compared to 71 assists. Had at least 40 goals all of the last 4 years before that. But Pastrnak, with that high in assists, who do you think is going to step up for the Bruins next season?
And with respect to offense?
With respect to offense.
Well, let's see what the Bruins are able to do here during the offseason, Sam. I think one of the things that was clear in listening to Cam Neely and Don Sweeney talk at the end of the season, the Bruins understand they need some more top six help. I think that's one of the things that will certainly help this team if they're able to add to that. So I think, when I look at the Bruins in totality, I think that you'd like to see some growth from, obviously, James Higgins is going to have an opportunity to make the team here out of camp. Can he be an impact player? It's a lot to ask for a guy who is as young as he is. To be able to come in and be an impact player. So I think the Bruins would like to ease him into that type of an opportunity. But for a guy like Elias Lindholm, I don't think that anybody assumes that he's going to get back to a 40-goal, 80-point number, which he had with the Calgary Flames. Now, he only hit that once. I think for a guy like Lindholm, he averages, if you look throughout his career, it's about 20 goals and 60 points. Well, he's been below that average here in the first 2 years. This past year that just finished was better than his first year. Can he add a little bit of that offense? He certainly got the production that you needed from a guy like Morgan Geekie. And the Bruins as a group sort of scored as a committee, and that's what they needed. Guys like Fraser Minton and Victor Arvidsson chipped in. Charlie McAvoy had a career year offensively. But can the Bruins add some pieces maybe to their top six to help out a little bit more? It's not a big free agent market, so I expect if the Bruins are going to upgrade here, it will most likely be through a trade. What that exactly looks like, I don't necessarily know, but I think that the Bruins as a group need to be able to upgrade some of the skill and the speed on their team. If you're watching the Stanley Cup playoffs now, in particular, some of the teams that came out of the Atlantic Division, whether it's the Buffalo Sabres or now the Montreal Canadiens, they are loaded with young, fast, skilled players. They're in a different position, however. I think that we should stress this, than the Bruins were. Those were teams that went through full rebuilds, and they were in them for a very long time. For the Bruins, they were in the playoff chase or chasing a Stanley Cup for a long time. So a lot of the assets, the picks, the prospects, those were pieces and assets that they used to get other pieces that they needed in order to hopefully go on deep playoff runs. But now I think, everybody wants to use whatever reword, and it's not a rebuild with the Bruins, but they've repositioned themselves. So now whether it's a guy like James Higgins, or you've got Dean Letourneau, who's still at Boston College, Will Zellers, who's at North Dakota, and some of the picks that they have, they are repositioned with some of the assets, picks, and prospects to be in a better spot to try and add to their roster.
100%. And definitely Morgan Geekie he had his best season of his career, and as a Bruin, 68 points, 39 goals, 29 assists. And you really said it perfectly. As a committee, the Bruins, everyone's going to have to chip in. James Higgins, obviously developing if he potentially makes the team. But thank you so much for coming on, Judd, and we look forward to hearing your calls next Bruins season.
Thanks for having me, Sam. All the best.